Hello, my name is Richard. Um, um, as Jeff just mentioned, I um, was in the Rising Stars group show at College of Lake County last fall, and I showed a bunch of paintings there. Um, the paintings in the show, and really all of my paintings extensively use image transfer as a way of constructing images and as a way of collaging images together. Um, and yeah, I'm happy to do this demo because I've been playing around with image transfers and with different um, mediums and different substrates for a long time, since I was in high school, which was about 5 or 6 years ago. So I am happy to share everything I've learned playing around with it, and because it's a really um, flexible technique. You can use it for a lot of different things. And yeah, I like it because it's very physical. It's very physical. The process of doing the transfer, which I'll demonstrate, is very messy and grody, and you get into it, and that more often than not reflects on the final image of something that's been worked over and scraped at and scratched. So it has a lot of uses, but it's also very specific, which is why I'm drawn to it and something that I kind of use in my paintings. Um, I guess I have, can I screen share? Am I allowed to do that? Oh, am I screen
Yeah.
sharing now?
Yes, yeah, we did
Okay,
that.
excellent. So,
Can everyone
slideshow.
see that?
Can everyone see a big white screen that says image transfer demo with Richard Medina?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So these are some photos from the show, uh, just the pieces installed. Um, this kind of just gives an idea of what my paintings look like. They're very kind of colorful and collagey and abstract, but with like recognizable images here and there. Lots of layering. Um, I use a lot of silk screening as well, screen printing, in combination with different types of image transferring. Um, yeah, I don't. This is the structure of this is weird. This is my bio. I and my webs or that's my. Why did I put my email address? I meant to put my website. That's just my email address. If you want to email me, this is my email address. My website is richardmedina.com. Maybe I'll leave it. This is my bio. I graduated from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago last year, and I've been exhibiting at alternative art spaces and galleries in Chicago for the past few years. I'm a painter. Most of my work is paintings. Occasionally, I'll do experimental like installations and video pieces, but I think of myself as a painter. I mainly do paintings. Um, and I'm gonna the majority of this slideshow is going to be a chronological move through how I've approached doing image transfers, and you can see the quality of the image transfers increases. So this is a piece I made when I was in high school, and it was 2017. And you can see all of the markings are transferred with a gel medium with just regular printer paper. So you can see it's really gnarly if you look at it. And I'm kind of exploiting that by adding all these like gestural brushstrokes into it. So it kind of mixes together. You can see this guy, this portrait of this guy. You can see how aggressive the transfer process was because you see underneath his head. There's a lot of scraping and smudging, and it's actually lifting up the ink so that you see the orange behind it. So that is something, if you go too deep into the thing, you kind of take out the ink. But there's also, you see this with a lot of my older stuff, but there's these like white trails, which are leftover pieces, like leftover paper, pulpy things. And that's kind of an error in the process because it's left over. So these were my first kind of experiments with it. There's a lot of information about how to do basic image transfers online. The process that most people use is Mod Podge and just a regular printer paper printed image. Um, and yeah, so this is what these were these initial kind of playing with it. And then I got into these weird rabbit holes of constructing um, images in like Photoshop, and then printing them out, and then transferring them, and then painting over them. So it had all these weird kind of like quasi collage textures to it. Like you can see in the dress on in the yellow, there's like that pattern that's kind of coming through. So I was doing a lot of it's a very strange technique because there's no real good use for it. It's very any way that you kind of apply it, it's going to look very yeah, really grody and kind of weird and off-putting. So it's a very specific technique, but I think you can get a lot out of it in terms of like collage or other kinds of paintings. This is one that I made. This is actually pretty large, this painting, but I'm using two types of transfer techniques. With the fists, you can see that's just printer paper and then gesso. And then this like uh, gray and pink shape at the top is a matte medium and paper. So that's one of the things I'm going to go into, is the differences between these two different mediums and the pros and cons of those. You can see here there's a lot of image transfer is inherently fallible. Like you see all the tears and all the scratches. That comes with it. There's really no good way to avoid that. At some level, you can get really fine detail, but at some points it's just going to tear off. So then this is, a few years ago, I was kind of incorporating it using different things. I would paint onto paper and then transfer the paper. So I was transferring the acrylic paint via gesso onto paintings and just like playing with textures. After I would do a transfer, I'd paint over it and add all these different details and then transfer things onto that. So it was just get this like layers and layers of different things. This is another example of that. And then here, this is one of the more recent things. And this is kind of where I'm at currently with the technique. So this entire image is transferred. So this entire image I created in Photoshop and then had printed on a wide format inkjet printer, and then using gesso transferred it to a panel. And you can see with this screenshot of the Google images, it's very crisp. Has a very high fidelity. You still see, I mean, it's some parts are unavoidable, like in this gridded shape on the to the right of the screenshot, you still see like little white flecks. And that's something that's just going to be there no matter what. This is something that's more recent. I did this a few months ago. And this is again, I'm kind of balancing out the photoshoppiness with very built up brush marks and paint. But you can still see here, like there are errors in the image transfer. And these paintings are probably the most sophisticated transfer processes that I've been able to achieve in the past 5 years. And you can see that they're still kind of they don't look printed. They don't look like they're just printed from a printer. But I mean, that's kind of an inherent part of it, is that it's this very human kind of way of interacting with digital images, because there's a lot about the process of scraping away, and it's kind of archaeological. So you can bring meaning to the weirdness and sketchiness of how the images look. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Can you tell us what that one was called?
Which one?
When you just had on the screen.
Oh,
it
wait,
looked like two panels that were joined.
Hang on, let me screen share again. Here, this one?
Yes.
This one is called Bruxism, which is a medical term for grinding your teeth. Like at night, I grind my teeth a lot. And I wanted to, the idea with this whole kind of presentation, I'm really not really getting into any of the thought or ideas behind my paintings, because I'm trying to focus on the technical details. But with this one, I was thinking of paints, because I wanted to bring in these kind of gloopy, big, chunky paint splotches that you see in the middle. And all these things like mosquitoes, swatting mosquitoes. It's really gross, but like that's kind of like mark making in a gross way. And then the water droplet is also, and then grinding. They're all things that are very inherent to paint. So all these were very textural kind of ideas that I was bringing together. That's behind this one. That's kind of the thought process. But yeah, let's see here. I guess I should clarify what I'm talking about when I say image transfer, since I'm so familiar with it, but I feel like there's a lot of technical things that aren't immediately obvious about it. This is my so I have some test things. So these are just scraps of paper. But this is part of an image of a bear, I think. But this is a very typical kind of print. It's toner. So it's from I printed this out at my job, but it's like this big like office printer, copier, scanner thing. I printed this out. This is very common. The other, I think if people have home printers, it would be more, it would be an inkjet printer. I don't have a home printer. I have these leftover pieces, and these are wide format inkjet prints that I had done at a print place. And then this is just text. So I'm going to be doing a demonstration of all three of these. The toner, not toner. Why do I keep saying toner? What am I thinking? Laser print. Yeah. So laser print versus inkjet versus I believe this is laser print text, but it acts the same way as inkjet text. But I'm going to be doing three different kinds of prints and explaining the differences and nuances of each one with 3 different mediums. So this is the most I don't use Mod Podge. It's very common. It's in craft stores. People use it a lot. I think it's fine for small transfers. I prefer using this. This is probably overkill, but it's golden, very thick, gloopy, glossy medium. Sometimes I mix this with my paints. I use acrylic paint, and it adds a lot of body to the paint, because acrylic paint is mainly water. It's water and filler, and then some. Depending on how expensive the brand is, golden is usually pretty good, but acrylic paint is like water, fillers, and then pigment. So when it dries, it loses so much of its body because it evaporates, and then it also it shrinks a lot. So this is a way that I get like really thick, glossy paint brush strokes, even when it's dry. So this is the most analogous to Mod Podge, even though it's kind of it's like the steroided version of Mod Podge, I guess. I use gesso primarily for image transfers. I haven't seen anyone talk about it. I kind of just came to it organically. It's for I can get into it, and then you can also use just acrylic paint for transfers, which, I mean, it's essentially the same thing, but it's pigmented. So yeah, I guess anything that would be white or clear, I guess, would be the color, and then it would just get, so it's very dark when it transfers, but you can use that for collages. I also have 2 different substrates. I have these tiny little canvases, and then panels. So I'm going to be doing a combination of all these different kinds of prints with these different mediums on these different substrates, and explaining the pros and cons of each. That's the demo today. And there are differences, which is I have discovered by trial and error. So I guess I can just go into, maybe I'll do the demo. I'll just go into it and talk. That will probably, I wouldn't normally use like a paper palette, but this is not my table, so I don't want to get it dirty. Yeah, so what else? You can also use wood. That's actually a very I don't really use wood a lot. I guess with wood, if you like what is it called? Like add gesso and sand it and stuff, prepare it. It acts kind of the same as panel. For raw wood, if you use like a matte medium, it adheres pretty well. I don't really transfer directly to wood, but I have done it in the past, and it's gone well. So the first combination I'm doing is text with gesso on panel. So I use panel primarily. It's very nice. It's very rigid. I used to use canvas a lot. I can explain why I don't really use it anymore. Panel is nice. I use bigger ones than this. It's kind of neutral, I've found. And yeah, it's kind of, you can do anything to it. You can press onto it. And yeah, I really like using panel, because it kind of removes the issue of bending and warping from the paint process, which which is nice and makes things easier. For text, I found that using gesso gives the most fidelity with text. Oh, the other thing I should mention, whenever you image transfer, it comes out reversed. So this text will end up reversed. And when I'm preparing image files to print, I have to reverse it. I have to remember to reverse the image, to flip the image before I print it. Yeah, so it's something to consider, I guess. Yeah, I guess I could just start doing it. So I'm opening up my gesso. Gesso adhere, all of these mediums adhere to themselves very well. They don't necessarily adhere to a dry substrate that well. So whenever I'm doing it, one of the biggest, I guess, with the difference between gesso and like acrylic, because these kind of function the same. The gel medium and the acrylic, they're essentially the same, just one's has color. It's kind of like damage control, I guess. So with gesso, when you're okay, so let me explain. So when you're removing the paper and leaving the ink adhered to the medium, which is what the image transfer process is, things can go wrong in two different ways, and it depends on which medium you choose. So if you use gesso, it's not, if you use an acrylic medium, it sticks to itself. It's like plastic, so it pulls and stretches. So when you're removing it, if there's an issue, then it will, the image, the paint itself, the ink adhered to the dried medium will warp and push and kind of wrinkle, because it will stick to the medium, and the medium can, move around. And oftentimes you get air bubbles if you don't do it correctly. So with gesso, instead of getting air bubbles, it'll just completely flake off. So you won't get, it'll just be a chunk missing. And for my paintings, I do prefer that to air bubbles, but it's just something that it fits better with my method of composition. It's just one of those things where it's a very flawed method, but in certain contexts, it works very well. So I'm applying the gesso first to the, what is this called? Panel. Because as I said, it likes to stick to itself. So if it doesn't have anything, if it's just gesso going directly onto dry panel, it will not have a very strong bond. You don't need a lot of it. I just kind of brush it on. And then this is kind of a weird demonstration because these are just scraps that I bought from my studio. When I do it, it's like it's a larger piece. I don't really do just text. This would be an example of something that you could do if you want to have a background of like text. You would need to flip it somehow digitally before printing out, unless you wanted reverse text, I guess. But I'm just going to go in and completely cover the front of the text with gesso. And more is better. You want to have a very kind of gloopy, thick texture to it. And then, oh wait, I have a bucket. Yes. Okay. And then, yeah, and then you just put it on. So it's easier here because it's very small, but you would get, you get air bubbles when you apply it. So I have a
Wallpaper scraper.
Yes, thank you. Uh, and I use it to get rid of the air bubbles, like that. So what this is doing is that it's adhering the ink, specifically the black ink, to the gesso that's adhered to the panel. So you would let this sit for like 24 hours until it's bone dry. And I have one that I did a couple days ago. So this is essentially the same thing. It's the other half. I cut the paper in half. I did the exact same thing. So it curls up like this. And this is completely dry. You can kind of see the text through it. And this is where the process gets really hands-on, and everything happens. You know, you can screw it up, you can change it, the entire image happens. So sometimes with this leftover thing, I kind of just pull it off and see what sticks. That's pretty good. So I'm just pulling off this added gesso on the edges. So you can kind of see this, it's kind of, you're seeing it through a layer of paper, a thin layer of paper that's still adhered by the gesso. So what you would do is that you would get some water, and you would wet it. You can use a sponge or a brush or something. I just use my fingers most of the time. And then it's a process of scraping away and rolling away the pulp of the paper that's still attached, and doing it lightly enough that you don't damage any of the ink. You can see there's kind of a thing there where it's, you can see there at the very bottom, it's kind of torn a little bit. It's kind of distressed, I guess. So with this, text is a little more difficult because you're basically getting rid of all of the white, which is just a layers and layers of paper pulp. And this can go on, water is better, but this is really where most of the work happens. I did larger pieces. Most of my paintings are like 18 by 24 inches. And so I do these massive inkjet transfers as the base layer. And that's gnarly. That takes a long time to get all the paper off. Because you're not just trying to have the image be visible. You're trying to remove everything, all of the paper. It's like you have a printed sheet of paper and you're trying to get rid of everything except the literal, molecules of ink that are on the surface. And yeah, before, whenever I'm working, I would get blisters. So it's, it's not a great, it's very bodily. It's very,
Tactile.
yeah, tactile. It takes a long time. And it's tricky because you'll see, like it looks like for here, the text looks fine, but I can tell there's like, when you use water, it kind of acts as it makes all the pulp transparent, which is very tricky because what will often happen is that you'll do the transfer with water and it looks great. And then you come back after it's dry and it's all cloudy. And that's because you didn't remove, there's still paper pulp attached to the surface of the transfer. So the benefit, I feel, of doing transfers as opposed to other types of collage is that it is extremely sturdy once the transfer is finished. So like once it would be finished, there's no, I don't even know if this qualifies as collage because there's no it's completely smooth, it's completely flat, it's literally just the leftover ink adhered to the gesso, and that's on the panel. So it's kind of this invisible way of doing collage. It you can do I play with it because I work a lot in layering, so sometimes I'll do digital collages in Photoshop with lots of layering and kind of illusionary space, and then when it's transferred and then I layer with paint on top of that, it adds these kind of weird MC Escher like dimensions to the painting. So that's something that I like about image transfers as opposed to just like gluing something onto the surface, is that it really becomes part of the painting. It becomes part of the surface, part of the substrate. So you can see it's reversed. But let's see here. So this was regular printer paper. Printer paper is you get a lot of this, a lot of these like tiny little bits. It doesn't really peel off very well. It's less the ink is less durable, so it comes off a lot easier. Yeah, so those are some of the, it does, I mean, it's, if you're doing kind of an abstract thing and you finish getting the paper off, it could be a nice background if you're doing text. I mean, if you digitally flipped the text, it could be a nice background, I guess. And it's a lot more seamless than getting the same result in different ways. The closest kind of technique that I found that gets a similar looking result is screen printing, which is why I use that in my work. So the combination of transferring and screen printing, I think, is very strong because it messes with your sense of like what's flat and what's part of the transfer and what's added on top of it, and the layers, what's behind what. So yeah, this isn't, I would probably let this dry and then come back later with a sponge maybe, and then really get the remaining bits of pulp away. But this is a pretty good thing. You can see with text, it's with black, especially black ink, it really takes a beating when you're doing the transfer, because it's other colors are not as bad, but when you're like rubbing it and scratching it, it really kind of makes it look more aged. And yeah, so that's text.
Hey Richard, have you ever tried starting with the sponge instead of your fingers?
Oh yeah.
Does that work any better? Or?
Yeah. So if you use, I can do that on another one. Another technique I've found that works is if you use your, well, okay, so let me so the other one that I use with gesso is what was I using here? Panel and wide format inkjet. I believe this was toner, whereas this is actual ink. With this, there are different ways that the paper comes off of the when you're doing the transfer, that paper comes off. So the way that this was kind of like becoming dusty and like very tiny and very like sawdust is how regular printer paper works if you do it kind of dry. Like you mentioned, if you soak the entire thing before it becomes these. I would use like my fingernail and like push at it. I wonder if I can demonstrate that. Maybe I'll do it with this one. Or no, I'll do it with the toner one. That would be a good one to do. That's nice. This is possibly the best way. This is the one that I use for all of my paintings, is this it's very thin paper, and it's this really high, there's a high amount, I don't know what's the word, dots per inch. It's very detailed in the prints. And using this with gesso is how I've found that I get the most fidelity in image transfers when I'm trying to get something to look like the photo that I use, that I see on my, like when I'm putting together the composition in Photoshop. The way I get it to look the most like that is using the combination of panel, gesso, and inkjet, which I can do now. So this is, I did the gesso, so it's the same thing of layering it down, and then you want it to dry. And then I did, so this is, the thickness of the paper affects how it comes off. So something that's pretty thin usually is more difficult to get off in one piece. Like this came off, this big chunk came off in one piece, but it's only like half of the paper. So the other half was left here and I had to like scrape it off. With this, this inkjet, I wonder if it'll work now, but yeah, look at that. So this is nice because it actually takes off all of the paper and leaves. It has a residue behind of the ink, but it leaves most of the ink behind. And this is great because it's like all of that. There are bits that are, if you can see, there are bits that are still left. But most of it is just the ink, which is makes my life a lot easier. So with this, the reason I didn't soak the paper for this is because I don't really use this technique a lot. With printer paper, you would want to soak the paper. With this, I do it completely dry because you can get this nice roll. And if you do it dry, then it's easier to get the entirety of the paper off. If you get it wet, maybe I can show what it's like to do it wet. So if you like soaked the entire, if you soak the entire paper, it kind of starts to disintegrate. Which, I mean, I guess that's what you want, is for the paper to disintegrate. But when it's dry, it comes off in rolls and you can pull it off and it's a lot easier to remove. But like what I would do is I would take, I don't have fingernails now, but if I had fingernails, I'd go like that and I'd do these scratches across. And this is I don't like this as much. You get these like saturated pulpy rolls, which is I mean, that's just what it looks like. I remember these from like the past couple of years of doing these. Now I do this, I do the transfer, or I do the removing try, because it kind of sticks to itself and it rolls off. Again, there's no every time ooh, that's a good one. Every time I do the transfer, it's something different. So you could have a good composition, but if there are like air bubbles when it dried, a whole section could be missing. So that's a good one. I found that this is this combination of materials and techniques fits my purpose with my paintings the best, because you get kind of the most detail, and it's the flattest. So I do screen print on top of these, and if you use like a gel medium, it kind of sticks to itself, not necessarily the panel. So you could have the section that has an air bubble underneath it that still exists and still has the image, but it's just kind of like above the panel. And that can lead to a lot of wrinkles and weird spots that are difficult to especially screen print, but to do anything afterwards. So that's a reason why I stick to using gesso. I think it also has, oh, it's opaque. Gesso is opaque. So when you have parts that are white or very light, it's white or very light. But if you use like a Mod Podge or a gel medium, it would be clear. So the parts that are white would be whatever's behind it, not necessarily white. That's a big difference. I can't believe I forgot about that. So you can see here, I guess if the since the panel itself is white, it looks the same. So with this, again, I would probably let it dry and then, or no, not let it dry. I would, I did this dry. So what I would do again is get the whole surface wet once I'd gotten most of it off. And then here I want the paper to disintegrate since there are just like little bits and bobs that are still attached to it. So I would get the whole surface saturated and then just kind of like rub it. And this does a lot of work to remove the difficult to see bits of paper. And then after this, I would use like paper towels or something too.
Richard, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Could you leave some of that paper on there?
Oh, for sure. For
All right.
sure. It does look like, I mean, I've worked with it for so long that I don't leave any of it on because it just looks like you left it on. Oh yeah, you can see here that there's been some, it looks like abraded, and that's because the surface of the panel has some tooth to it. So that is what happens. So if you want something extremely flat, extremely smooth, the issue with having an extremely smooth surface is that there's a danger of the medium failing because it needs something to stick onto, which is why I initially cover the base with the substrate with gesso, so it has something to stick onto. But as you can see, it's a pretty high definition transfer, and this is what I use for all of my paintings. I mean, there are parts where, like, again, like this is kind of abraded, and that's kind of from the tooth of the panel. There are other parts where the pulp is still there, which I would probably remove. But then you see in this dark brown section, it gets kind of lighter here. And that's not part of the image. That's because I was scraping it. So like you could really dig into it and remove parts of it. So like that's just the back of the panel. So there are it's very kind of material because you have this layer of ink, this layer of paper, and then a layer of the ink, and then the gesso. So you can push into that and kind of move it around slightly, and it affects the it makes it look more worn. Sometimes it removes a lot of the saturation. You can kind of scratch onto it, and it looks kind of beaten up. I don't know, I've never done this. I try to avoid doing this. Probably like, yeah, that's interesting. So it's very physical. It's very material. And then what I do is I would add paint onto it and build it up. One of the hold on. Well, let me do the other methods. So this is a fun one. With this one, so those are both on panel. Canvas is not the ideal. From what I found, it's not the ideal substrate to use for image transfers because it requires a lot of pushing, and it kind of like bows in the canvas. So in a lot of my early paintings, you can see the kind of the edge of the stretcher bar because I'm just pushing on it so heavily. You can get around that by detaching the canvas from the stretcher, but that's just extra work. I do, when I do screen print, I do take it off of the stretcher bars to screen print. So I guess it's not, yeah, but when you're really pushing on it and rubbing into it, it does bow in. So I guess taking it off of the stretcher bars would fix that, but I was just too lazy to do that. I'm going to do acrylic paint. So for acrylic paint, like I said, with the gesso, anything that is white would be whatever color you're using. So it gets very dark very quickly because the lightest color is the pigment that you're using. As I was saying earlier, a lot of acrylic paint is fillers and water. So I actually use cheaper acrylic paints when I'm doing transfers with acrylic paint because I don't want to waste my nice acrylics on doing image transfers. And it's also the more like matte medium. I guess you could also take matte medium and then add paint to it. But this just is a different way to do it. It's adds visual texture to the piece. It changes things up. It kind of can upset. If I have a lot of paintings where it's kind of this collagey painty thing, and then there's a single image that's in a color and it just kind of pops out. So for this, I found that the more paint you use, the better. So it feels like wasting paint, but if you just kind of like, glob it on, and then let me get my brush. It's so weird doing this in my apartment. And then you have a brush. And then you want to get it really thick, because you're relying on all of the medium, all of the kind of fillers and binders that are in the paint to do the work of adhering and sucking in the ink. So you want it to be really thick. And then what was I using for this one? The laser print. Okay, perfect. So this is laser print, and I'm just going to adhere it directly on. Again, you want to use some kind of card scraper to really adhere it. You get all these parts that kind of bulge out. I have a hard time seeing what is, or feeling, I guess, what is an air bubble and what is just a bunch of like acrylic. They kind of feel the same. You want to get all the air bubbles out if you can. And then this would want to dry for 24 hours. I found with most of these, they're workable at around 4 hours, but I've been hasty on so many different projects, and started getting it wet and rubbing, and then it really messes it up if it's not completely dry. So that is an advice, is to wait and be patient. This is what we just did, but I did it 2 days ago. And with this one, I didn't really paint it on. I just kind of squeezed a bunch of paint on and then pressed the image onto it. So it has this organic edge to it of like a paint splatter. which is an interesting effect. So with this one, I think I can just peel it off. Ooh. Oh, interesting. Oh, wow, this didn't work at all. That's wild. Yeah, so with laser print, the reason I prefer inkjet is because I don't understand the science behind it. There's something about the way that the ink is applied. It's like toner that's been like sprayed at it versus um, ink that's been like kind of put onto it like a printing press. So, oh, that's so interesting. I've never seen that before. So with here, this is still adhered, so we can do the transfer here. Yeah, and then you get the really pulpy, really thick, gloopy paper. Yeah, and then I would just kind of work at it and push the ink around, not the ink, the paper around until it comes off. It's so weird. Oh. Yeah, so the way I'm doing it is I'm just kind of like, wow, that's kind of a cool. That's really weird. I kind of like that. The image of the bear just becomes this like textural addition to the paint. That's so weird.
It looks three-dimensional, Richard. I think it's an
Yeah,
awesome effect.
that's crazy. I'm very surprised by this.
This is very cool.
Yeah. So
It's like a bear in front of the moon.
wow, that's
Hold
so...
it the other way. Keep going. One more. One more. There. Nope.
Nope.
One more. No, the other way. One more. His feet are on the ground. Put his feet down. There.
Oh, I see it.
You see it?
Yeah.
He like just jumped off a log. And
Yeah.
smelling something.
That's very cool. So this is an advantage of using acrylic, is that if you screw up the transfer process, there's still something in the background for visual interest, I guess. This is cool. I like this. Maybe there is something to using laser printed photos, because they have just they don't like to adhere to the paint as much. With inkjet, it kind of the medium kind of grabs the ink and kind of holds onto it, soaks it in. With this is much more on the surface. Like this could, I feel like this could, no, it's pretty on there. You could have braided it pretty easily and get it off, but yeah, that's a weird, unexpected result. So I guess that's the thing I wanted to emphasize, is that this is I've been doing this for such a long time, and I've gotten so many different results, and it's still not 100%. It's still a very it's like alchemy, like it's very temperamental. So that it's a cool technique, and it's kind of approachable, I think, because there's no right way to do it. You can kind of apply it to so many different things and get so many different weird results. The fourth one I wanted to go through was this thing I've been talking about so much, is this gel, extra heavy gel gloss, essentially Mod Podge, but much thicker. And I think it has a higher amount of solids in it. So where's my... I foolishly only brought one paintbrush from my studio, so I have to clean it off between. Okay, so with this, you actually don't have to use as much as I've been using for the gesso and the acrylic paint. It's pretty sturdy, and you kind of just want to apply it on. There's no special way to do it. Making sure the entire thing is coated. And then I've tried different ways of either applying, what am I doing? Inkjet with gel on canvas. Okay, so I'm going to be using, I'll use this one. It's the Edmund Fitzgerald. There are different ways you get the different results, kind of. So if you apply the medium to the image, that makes sure that all of the image most of the time will end up on the surface. If you apply it solely to the surface, then if there's an air bubble, that whole section will be missing because it just won't adhere. So I always apply it to, I do both, but I make sure to apply it to the surface of the print, because that ensures that not all of it's going to end up there, but you want to make sure that everything is covered in a thick layer, so that if there is an air bubble, with this one especially, if there is an air bubble, the image will not be broken. It'll still be there. It'll just have a weird surface kind of bubble to it. So you'll still get the entire image, but there'll be a tiny bit of warping because some of it won't be adhered to the canvas or the panel. And that's a benefit. I've talked about it as kind of an issue with like screen printing, but it is something that's nice, is if you do get the entirety of the image if you use like a matte, like a acrylic medium. So with this one, I'm just kind of applying it with my fingers. You can also use the card scraper. And then, yeah, all of these, you guys just gotta wait, 8 hours or so. Yeah, it kind of buckles as it's drying, which is kind of alarming at first. Like if I came back to this in an hour, it would probably look like it's like it had a bunch of air bubbles in it, but that's just, I feel like that just happens when it's evaporating. It's kind of like has this weird growing and shrinking thing. I haven't noticed that affecting much in the end. You can still see the stretcher bars through this. It's wild. But yeah, let's go to the one.
Richard, have you ever tried a brayer?
I do have a brayer in my studio, and I do use a brayer. Not for applying things, but for getting the air bubbles out. It's very helpful with when you're, especially with larger panels. I have found that a card scraper is more effective because I feel like you can go over air bubbles with the brayer. With the card scraper, it's very, I guess, I don't know. I'm not expert on brayers. Maybe I'm using it wrong, but I just prefer card scrapers because they have a sharp, hard edge, and that's what you want to kind of cover everything, is to have it be very even. So this is the version, right? Yes, this is the version of that I just did. So let's see what happened to it. Whoa. Whoa. Oh, that's really nice. The way I'm pulling it off is something that isn't the, like I said, it depends on the paper. I'm not sure what kind of paper this is. It's pretty light, it's pretty thin, but it's also matte, I think. Yeah, I really like it because you can peel it off in a lot in one go. I think this is still, this might be still wet. Interesting. But yeah, this is a pretty, oh, I would need to wet it. Ooh. This is pretty nice. I like the way it kept the colors. A lot of the times when when I'm doing oh, is it back? Yeah, a lot of the times when I'm doing when you're doing transfers, it loses so much saturation because when you're either rubbing and abrading off of some of the ink, or when you're peeling it off, like you can see I peeled this off, there's parts of it that are still there, so you're losing like a percentage of the saturation of the intensity of the colors, and that's always going to happen. It looks much better when it's wet, and it has a lot more when it's wet. So actually, a way to get around that is to use some kind of varnishing. I've been using golden, like a gloss varnish on all of my transfers, and it works pretty well. It makes it look like it does when it's wet. So very, very saturated, very dark. I'm actually kind of happy with how this turned out. This is there are I just use this because I use this for my paintings, but there's like, I'm sure it would look slightly different if it was like medium, gel gloss, or light gel gloss. But this is yeah, I'm pretty happy with the how it's managed to retain the colors. But like it, there are these parts that didn't quite adhere. I think there's an air bubble here, and this also is gone. So yeah, you can see that the paper is starting to dry, so you see like a cloudiness start to come back. So I mean, there are issues with it, but as long as you kind of build it into the style of the work that you're making, it can disappear. Another thing I do is be a good one. Oh, this would be a good one to demonstrate on. So after you do an image transfer, it kind of looks rough. It looks terrible. But there are a lot of things you can do on top of it to add interest and add dimensionality to it. One of them, like, just painting on top of it. One of them that's interesting that I do occasionally, I'll demonstrate on this this gesso one. Yeah, okay. Is squeegeeing thin layer of paint across it, and that just immediately dyes it whatever color. And that's another way to get interest, is that like if you did it from here, let's do it from here. It tints the entire thing, and then you get these like artifacts, I guess, from the dips, the mountains and valleys of the transfer, and that leaves the kind of like texture on top of it adds a visual texture on top of the image that is already there. It kind of highlights it. So you get that kind of like tie-dye looking effect there, and that's just exploiting one of the inherent kind of flaws with the process. So this is kind of nice. Yeah, let's see here. So there are alternatives to this. I have been or when I was in college, one thing I would do is I would build up an image in Photoshop and then do this big transfer, and then I would completely paint over it. So this one, maybe you want to switch to the this one is a painting that I made in 2018, and it's completely image transfer. Even the parts that are solid, it's kind of a waste now that I'm looking at it, because I mean it's just I'm just covering over parts of it, and this is kind of where I started in image transfer, is using it as a crutch, because if you look at this, you would never guess that there was photographs that where it started from. So it really was like an artistic crutch. And then I started breaking it down. This one is also from 2018, and you can see that it's all over. I'm using all sorts of different things and mixing them with paint and layering on top of each other and doing all these collage things. Recently I've kind of gotten not bored, but I interested in other ways of using photography and using my own images, and finding ways to put paint on top of them. So my roommate, my friend Spencer, works at a sign shop. So I've been getting these acrylic signs essentially, but acrylic prints on like 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch acrylic plastic, and then adding these massive gloopy brush strokes on top of them. And that comes, I'm still figuring that out. I've never painted on like extremely smooth plastic before. So there are issues with it. I'm still experimenting with it. I don't have any good results from it yet, but that's something that I'm kind of moving towards maybe. I think screen printing is also a good alternative. You can also combine it with image transfers. And then the most obvious, I guess, alternative would be just printing directly onto canvas. That's something that I know some people who do either print onto canvas and then add paint onto it, or print onto canvas and then like do a paint by numbers thing. And yeah, I've done it. I've tried it a few times, and it just doesn't necessarily work for me. There's something that is kind of missing in all of those. I feel like that's unique to image transferring, because it's such like a physical process, and it's so full of errors and so full of mistakes. And you see everything in the final thing. I mean, you can cover it up, but it's like this is a main way that I kind of cover things up, is by doing a tint on top of it, that kind of covers up mistakes. But there's something, as I've been doing all these paintings with printed acrylic plastic, there's something I miss, kind of the organic, kind of messy, ugly parts of the image transfer that are completely gone, because it's a nice print. So for me, I think it's a good way to kind of mediate between like digital images and painting. That's something that my work, I don't know if you've gathered, but I'm interested in kind of the internet and digital things mixed with painting, which is a millennia old art form. So for me, it works really well on that conceptual level, and also in the sense of like collecting things and layering things and collaging things together. It works. And I don't know, I don't know anyone else who's doing it. So I hopefully some of you will try it and maybe incorporate it into your own pieces. I think there are parts of it that are very useful, like the text. I think that could be very applicable. And then, there's a lot of room for experimentation. So I'm still constantly experimenting with it. I'm just trying different ways of using it. I've tried it with Elmer's glue, which does not work. I've also tried transferring from all sorts of different coffee filters, kind of works, not really. Paper towels did not work. What else did I try? I don't know, like sticky notes. Colored paper is interesting because if you print on it or draw on it and then transfer it, you still get a bit of the pulp and you leave some of the pulp. I've also done transfers with colored paper with like drawings or prints on it, and then done a transfer with acrylic paint. So it's like three different colors combating at the same time. So I think there's a lot of room for experimentation, and there's a lot of stuff that I haven't even tried. And I don't know anyone who's doing it. So hopefully this has been interesting, and you've gathered something from it and you'll try it. That's the end of what I've prepared. If anyone has questions, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, Richard, oh, wait, am I muted?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. Now, is there a specific name for this technique? Because it seems so varied. Is it all just photo transfer?
Yeah, photo transfer, image transfer.
Image transfer.
You know, in the didactics that I use for my paintings, I call it photo transfer, but I talk about it as image transfer. So maybe I should change it to image transfer. There's as far as I know, there are only a few other artists, contemporary artists that are using it. Of course, I'm blanking on their names, but I find it interesting because it is so varied and there's so much room for experimentation, but also the results kind of like they kind of look ugly and they kind of look terrible, and you have to kind of wrestle with it because it doesn't look, it looks so weird and so like strange that to kind of it gives you a problem and you have to kind of come up with a creative solution to it.
Right. No, I think it leaves a lot of room for creativity, you know? And I think some of the mistakes in the process are not a failure, but they added a lot of interest.
For sure.
Well, what you're adding is your own voice. In other words, you're taking something that's ambiguous and you're finding your way through it. And the process of your journey is left for everybody to see. It's a natural. I think it's terrific. I really do.
Mhm. Jeff, are you inspired?
I'm always inspired.
Never speechless, though.
I think I'm learning that from you, Chris.
Yeah, that's true.
Are there any other questions for Richard?
Yeah, anything? Okay. I guess that's it then.
I've got one question.
Yeah.
Have you
Shoot.
ever tried image transfer with other things like watercolors or like having painted some idea on something else and then transferring that image? It should work the same way, shouldn't it?
It does work. Or I think my phone just died.
That's right. You're not on it.
My phone just died. That's fine.
Oh,
Yeah, I've done a the process is simple enough that you could really do it with anything. I don't see why it wouldn't work with watercolors. It's the same kind of thing.
Would it work with, do you think it would work with, it should though, shouldn't it? It would work with acrylics painted on paper?
I've done it with acrylics painted on paper.
Oh, you have?
I'll do parts and I'll do like something like some kind of splatter, like an interesting idea that I just leave it. And then when when I'm working on a painting and I see it, I'm just like, oh, I'll just add that. And I just, I can physically add it to the paint. It's
That already got on there, sure.
Totally, yeah. So you
Yeah,
can
'cause I
definitely.
was curious about that because I know people have, some people save their scrap, what do they call it, films from painting.
Yeah.
Save they glue that onto
Yeah.
something, but this sounds like it'd be a lot simpler to do than to mess with all those little pieces.
Yeah, and it would be, the end result would be flat. It would be part of the surface, which is
Yes.
one of the major things
So
I
you
like.
probably do that with that thicker stuff, with that paste.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. It's all plastic, so you know, anything acrylic should be should work.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I don't know how outdated the book is, but I've just been reading a book on for water media. I can't remember who wrote it now, but he's really not Schiller. Anyway, he was saying you shouldn't combine acrylic, different brands of acrylic, because their makeup is different, some of the different brands, but that was the only one he said you shouldn't, like watercolors you can combine brands, but so I thought that was
I
fascinating.
have noticed that, where it's like, if I have a really I have in my studio, I have really nice acrylic, like golden acrylic or Liquitex, and then I have like Blick brands acrylic. I don't really mix them that well, because they're you do notice like a change, like the amount of fillers in the cheaper stuff really dulls out and shrinks so much compared to the
Oh,
other
it's
things.
great too. Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was lovely.
Okay.
I'm happy glad I was able to share.
Have a
All
good
right,
rock
and
art.
if you haven't already, go out to the Lake County Art League YouTube channel, and you'll see the interview that
Yes,
Richard
so
and I did.
I talked extensively about the very technical aspects of my paintings, but if you're interested in any of the thought that goes behind the paintings, there's a lot of that in our
Well,
interviews.
we also discussed in some details some of the mythology and stuff that is
Yeah,
in some of his work. So it's very interesting discussions that we had. So if there's nothing else, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Richard.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate
Thank
that.
you so much,
Oh,
Richard.
Definitely something we haven't seen before. So
And thanks
I
for
hope
for
you-
sharing
having me.
work
I
too.
think
That
this
was
is probably a
wonderful.
good experience for you too.
Yeah.
Learning how to present an idea.
Yeah, I've never talked to anyone really in this much detail about this process, which is funny because it's such an integral part of my like practice. But I've never really, this is my first time really explaining. Like I've had thought processes that I've gone through, but this is the first time I've ever kind of explained them to more than just myself. So
Well, that's what we wanted to hear. It's wonderful.
Richard, have you
did a
ever
wonderful
used
job.
stencils?
um
I could see like swiping
yeah,
color
I don't
paint
think,
over stencils over
I
your
don't know if
text.
what I have done a lot of is mono prints with acrylic paint, of doing something on a piece of paper and then like pressing it onto the surface of the canvas. I haven't done stencils. I have a few friends who also graduated last year at SCIC that do stencil stuff. So it's very much in the air. So maybe I'll start doing some
Yeah,
stencils
that's an
as well.
interesting idea of putting the stencil down before you put the Mod Podge or whatever it is.
Yeah, totally.
Or you could put the stencil over your text and smush the color over
Yeah,
like you did with the
yeah.
yellow smear.
I've
Yeah,
used various masking, so like masking tape or masking fluid, um, and then done an image transfer over it and then peeled it up, and it has a very interesting, weird, like sharp edge to it. Interesting.
Can you just do this with regular photos from Walgreens?
I've never tried it. Usually with the thicker you go, the harder it is to remove the paper or the backing from the actual photo. You should try it out. You're talking about like developed film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just to
people-
print Walgreens.
Yeah, people have done
Yeah.
that on t-shirts, and you have to pretty much soak the whole thing
Mm.
after
have you ever
dried.
have you ever taken an actual photograph where it's printed on like glossy paper as opposed to matte paper? Have you ever, is there
Yeah, in my
a
experience,
difference? Have you ever tried it?
it doesn't work as well as there's like a sweet spot to where if it's too thin, it actually the thinner, honestly, the thinner the better. Because you just want to minimize the amount of work you're doing to and the chances of failure that it might peel up. Because if with the thicker, glossier stuff, I feel like it's like a hardier kind of print. So like if I feel like that would be stronger than the whatever medium you're using. So I don't know. I'm just guessing at this. You should experiment, try it out. Let me know.
Thank you.
I could be wrong. So
Okay.
try it out for yourself.
Well, or if you end up trying it out, let us know how it came
Yeah,
out.
for sure.
So
And one of the things you mentioned when I was talking to you at one point is what was it? You were just having something printed on an acetate or plastic or something, or
Yeah, so like a sheet of acrylic, like
yeah.
a plastic. I don't have any, they're all at my studio, but it's just like um like a I don't know how to describe it. It's like this, but it's clear plastic and there's a print, like a printed photo or something.
Yeah, that's the one you were showing me when we were talking
Yeah.
one day, and it's yeah, that was interesting too. Okay.
So I have one last question, and that is, when you are going to set out to make one of these,
Mhm.
is it an intuitive process, or do you have sketches first, or
Yeah,
do you?
so it definitely happens in stages. There are parts that are very pre-planned. If you're doing a transfer, it has to be pre-planned unless you're doing it kind of sporadically in the moment. But even if you're doing it in the moment, there's like you have to wait for it to dry, so it is kind of planned out. So I'd say there's kind of a very for my paintings at least, I do like an extensive kind of sketching and collaging in Photoshop until I'm happy with
Oh,
the
okay, you do it online. I got it. You did it on.
until I'm happy with the final composition, and then that I reverse it, and then that gets printed. And then after I do the transfer, then it's then you're intuitive again, because then you maybe the painting's not finished, maybe you're adding other things. Hey, Spencer, my roommate just got back from work. Hi, Spencer. I'm doing my presentation. So it's yeah, so I mean I like it because there's room for spontaneity. There's room for changing things. You can add on so I've done image transfers onto already completed image transfers. You can layer it up because if you're using the same medium, it's not a problem. And yeah, I guess that's something, one of the reasons I'm not quite feeling the printing on acrylic as much as the transfer, because it's there's less room for kind of spontaneity because it's already kind of there. So I don't know.
Less room for ambiguity.
I have I forgot what you said about coating them. Do you seal them or coat them, or how do you
Yeah,
finish?
so I a lot of when the transfer dries, it gets really dull and really matte. So I've recently started doing varnishes, which blew my mind. I've never done varnishes before, and it's like, oh my gosh, it just makes everything look better because it makes it look like it's covered in water, which is what I've been aiming for, because it looks so much better when it's covered in water. So I use a glossy spray varnish when I'm finished with the painting, and that kind of deepens the color and makes it more saturated and darker.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, good.
Yeah, the first time I ever took one of my watercolors and put it behind glass, it made a huge difference.
I know. I'm
And
surprised more people. I don't know any other painters who are my age who are using varnish, and it's funny because it's like all paintings, essentially all oil paintings at least, are varnished. So it's like a crucial step, I feel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it gives it your work art gives it life, not just today, but longevity.
Definitely.
Oh, it's
Okay.
been really stimulating. Thank you again so
I'm
much.
glad.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
You have
all
a good
right.
night.
All
You-
right, I will
So,
remove
have
you
to
from
stop
the
practicing
spotlight.
that lives upstairs.
Maybe, maybe not.
Hello.
I gotta
Yeah.